When 8-year-old Oliver Marsh walked out of the restroom at a rest stop off Interstate 70 in eastern Colorado on a Saturday afternoon in late August and discovered that his father's car containing his father, his stepmother, and his 3 step-siblings had driven away without him, the boy did exactly what his mother had always told him to do if he ever got lost. He stayed put, stayed calm, and waited for help to find him. That help arrived 3 hours later in the form of Nathan Styx Brennan, a wiry biker with the Mountain Kings Motorcycle Club who noticed what no one else had, a child sitting alone like a stone, waiting for someone to remember he existed, and who would spend the next 200 miles proving to Oliver that being forgotten by one person doesn't mean you're forgettable to everyone. The rest, stop off Interstate 70 in eastern Colorado, was the kind of place people passed through without noticing. A handful of parking spaces, a small brick building with restrooms and vending machines, a few picnic tables overlooking flat farmland that stretched to the horizon. At 4:23 in the afternoon on a Saturday in late August, Nathan Styx Brennan pulled his Softail into one of the motorcycle spots and killed the engine, grateful for a chance to stretch his legs after 3 hours of highway riding. Styx was 44 years old, secretary for the Mountain Kings Motorcycle Club out of Denver, a wiry man with sun-weathered skin, a reddish-brown beard going gray at the edges, and forearms covered in tattoos that told the story of 20 years on 2 wheels. He had earned his road name from his build, 6'2" but barely 170 pounds, all angles and sinew, like a collection of sticks held together by leather and stubbornness. The patches on his black vest marked him as a man who had found his family on the road when his blood family had failed him. He was headed to Kansas City for a funeral, an old Army buddy who had lost his battle with cancer at 51, leaving behind a wife and 3 kids who deserved better. Styx had ridden out alone, needing the solitude of the highway to process another loss in a life that had seen too many. He walked to the restroom, splashed water on his face, bought a Coke from the vending machine, and was heading back to his bike when he noticed the boy. The kid was sitting alone at one of the picnic tables, hunched over with his elbows on his knees, staring at the concrete. He was maybe 8 or 9 years old, wearing cargo shorts and a faded Spider-Man t-shirt, sneakers that looked new, a small backpack on the bench beside him. His hair was brown and needed cutting, flopping over his forehead in a way that suggested nobody had gotten around to it lately. What struck Styx was not the boy's presence. Rest stops saw families all the time, but his stillness. Kids that age did not sit still. They ran around, complained about being bored, begged their parents for snacks from the vending machines. This boy sat like a stone, like he had been there for hours and expected to be there for hours more. Styx looked around the rest stop, a couple of cars in the parking area, an RV pulling out, a minivan with a family loading back in. None of them seemed connected to the boy, no adult hovering nearby, no parent calling him to hurry up. He walked over, keeping a respectful distance, not wanting to spook the kid. The boy looked up when Styx spoke, asking if he was okay. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face pale despite the August heat. He had been crying, not recently, but enough that the evidence lingered. The boy said he was fine in the automatic way kids say things they do not mean. Styx sat down on the opposite bench, setting his Coke on the table between them, and asked if the boy was waiting for someone. The boy's jaw tightened. He looked away, back at the concrete, and did not answer. When Styx asked his name, there was a long pause before the boy said quietly that his name was Oliver Marsh. Styx introduced himself, mentioning his road name and gesturing at his lanky frame, explaining the obvious reason behind it. The ghost of a smile flickered across Oliver's face, gone as quickly as it came. When Styx asked where his parents were, whether his mom or dad was around somewhere, the boy's face crumpled, not dramatically, not with sobs or wailing, but with the quiet devastation of a child who had been holding it together and could not anymore. Oliver said that his dad had forgotten him. The words hit Styx like a punch to the chest. He asked what the boy meant, and Oliver explained that he and his dad and his stepmom and her kids had stopped at the rest stop, that he had gone to the bathroom, and when he came out, the car was gone. They had left without him. He had been waiting, but they had not come back. Oliver's voice cracked as he said he thought his dad had forgotten he was there. Styx felt cold despite the summer heat. He asked how long Oliver had been waiting, and the boy said he did not know, a long time, that the sun had been higher when they left. Sticks looked at the sky. The sun was well into its afternoon descent. If the boy was telling the truth, and everything about him screamed that he had been alone at this rest stop for at least 2 or 3 hours. Sticks asked if Oliver had a phone, if he had tried calling his dad. Oliver shook his head, saying his phone was in the car, that his dad had said he did not need to bring it into the bathroom. When Sticks asked if he knew his dad's phone number, Oliver's face reddened with shame as he admitted he did not remember it, that it was saved in his phone, that he just pushed the button. He apologized, saying he should know it, that his mom had always said he should memorize it, but he never did. Sticks kept his voice calm, even though his mind was racing, telling Oliver it was okay, that lots of kids did not have numbers memorized anymore, that phones were for that. He asked about Oliver's mom, noting that the boy had mentioned her, asking if she was different from his stepmom. Oliver nodded, explaining that his mom lived in Kansas City, that he lived with her mostly, that he was just visiting his dad for August. His dad had moved to Utah last year with Brenda, his stepmom. Sticks asked if they were traveling from Utah to Kansas City, and Oliver confirmed it, saying his dad was driving him back to his mom, that it was too expensive to fly. Sticks did the mental math. Utah to Kansas City was easily a 12-hour drive, probably more depending on where in Utah they had started. This rest stop was maybe 3 or 4 hours from Kansas City, which meant they were most of the way through the trip. Sticks told Oliver to listen carefully, that he was going to help him, that they were going to figure this out together. But first he needed to make some phone calls. He told Oliver to stay right there with him, that he was not alone anymore. The boy nodded, and something in his posture shifted, the weight of solitary fear lifting just slightly now that an adult was taking charge. Sticks called 911 first, reported an abandoned child at the rest stop, gave them his information and the boy's name. The dispatcher said a state patrol unit would be there within 30 minutes. While they waited, Sticks bought Oliver a sandwich and a juice from the vending machines. The boy admitted he had not eaten since breakfast and was starving. They sat together at the picnic table while Oliver ate. Sticks asked him to tell him about his mom, trying to keep Oliver's mind off the situation. Oliver's face lit up for the first time as he talked about her, saying she was a nurse, that she worked at a hospital in Kansas City, that she was really nice, that she made the best mac and cheese, not from a box but with real cheese, and that she read to him at night even though he was old enough to read himself, because she said it was their special time. Sticks said she sounded great, and Oliver agreed, saying she was, that he missed her, that this month had felt really long. Sticks asked if Oliver had not had fun with his dad, and the boy's brightness dimmed. He said it was okay at first, but that Brenda had 2 kids and they did not like him much, and that his dad was always busy with them now. Oliver trailed off, and Sticks finished the thought for him, saying it was like he did not fit anymore. Oliver looked at him with surprise and said yes, exactly like that. Sticks nodded. He understood that feeling better than he wanted to admit. His own father had started a new family when Sticks was 10, and the slow erasure of being replaced, of becoming inconvenient, was something that never fully healed. The Colorado State Patrol arrived 22 minutes later. A trooper named Hernandez was professional and kind, crouching down to Oliver's level and speaking to him gently, taking Sticks's statement and thanking him for staying with the boy. Hernandez told Sticks privately, while another trooper sat with Oliver, that they were trying to reach the father now, that they had gotten a hit on the vehicle registration from the description the boy had given them. The father's vehicle was still westbound on Interstate 70, pulled over about 60 miles from the rest stop. The father apparently had not realized the boy was not in the vehicle until they stopped for gas. Sticks repeated the number, 60 miles, asking if they had driven 60 miles before noticing their kid was not in the car. Hernandez's expression tightened as he explained that the vehicle had 7 people in it, including 4 children, that the father said he assumed Oliver was sleeping in the back with the other kids, and the stepmother said she thought he was in the bathroom at the gas station and waited, but then assumed he had gotten in when she was not looking. Sticks said that was a lot of assumptions about an 8-year-old, and Hernandez agreed quietly, saying that the father was turning around now and should be there in about an hour and a half. Sticks asked what happened then, whether they just handed Oliver back to a man who forgot he existed for 3 hours. Hernandez's jaw tightened, saying that was above his pay grade, but that he could tell Sticks that Child Protective Services would be notified and there would be a report filed, that what happened after that depended on a lot of factors. Sticks looked over at Oliver, who was telling the other trooper about his mom, about Kansas City, about how he could not wait to see her. Sticks mentioned that Oliver's mother was in Kansas City, that Oliver had told him she had primary custody, that the dad was just driving him back at the end of a summer visit. Hernandez said they were trying to reach her now, that her number was in the system from the custody arrangement. Sticks made a decision. He told Hernandez that he was headed to Kansas City anyway, for a funeral the next day, and that if the mother wanted, he could drive Oliver the rest of the way, save the dad the trip, save the boy from having to get back in a car with people who forgot him. Hernandez studied him, taking in the leather vest, the patches, the road-worn appearance of a man who lived on the margins of polite society. He said it was a generous offer, but that they could not just release a minor to a stranger, even a well-meaning one. Sticks said he understood, but asked Hernandez to maybe mention it to the mother when they reached her, to give her his number and let her decide. Sticks wrote his name and phone number on a page from the small notebook he carried, handed it to the trooper, and went back to sit with Oliver. Sticks told the boy that his dad was coming back, that he had realized Oliver was not in the car and was turning around. Oliver's reaction was not relief. It was resignation. Sticks asked if he was not happy about that, and Oliver said his dad had not noticed for 60 miles, that it was a long time to not notice your kid was gone. Sticks had no argument for that. They sat together at the picnic table while the afternoon faded toward evening. Oliver talked about his mom, his school, his best friend Marcus, who lived 2 streets over and had a trampoline in his backyard. He talked about wanting a dog, but his mom saying their apartment did not allow pets. He talked about everything except his father. Sticks listened. Sometimes that was what kids needed most, someone to listen without judging, without fixing, without explaining away their feelings. Sticks's phone rang at 6:47 in the evening. Unknown number, Kansas City area code. A woman's voice, tight with barely controlled emotion, asked if this was Nathan Brennan. Sticks confirmed it was, and the woman introduced herself as Celeste Marsh, Oliver's mother, saying the police had given her his number, that they said he had found her son at a rest stop and stayed with him. Sticks confirmed it, saying Oliver was right there with him, that he was safe. He heard her exhale, a sound of relief so profound it was almost painful. She asked if she could talk to Oliver, and Sticks handed the phone to the boy, telling him it was his mom. Oliver's face transformed as he took the phone. He said her name twice, and then he was crying, really crying, the tears he'd been holding back for hours finally breaking free. He told her he had been so scared, that his dad had forgotten him, that he had just left and Oliver had not known what to do, but that this man had found him, the biker man, and that he had stayed with him and gotten him food, and that he was really nice, that he had listened. Sticks stepped away to give them privacy, walking to the edge of the parking lot where he could still see Oliver, but not hear the conversation. The boy talked for 10 minutes, laughing and crying in alternating waves, before finally walking over to hand the phone back, saying his mom wanted to talk to Sticks again. Sticks took the phone, and Celeste Marsh corrected him gently when he called her Mrs. Marsh, saying it was Ms., that she had taken her name back after the divorce. She told Sticks she did not know how to thank him, that the police had told her Oliver had been alone at that rest stop for almost 3 hours before Sticks found him, that anything could have happened, that anyone could have, and her voice broke. Sticks said Oliver was a brave kid, that he had kept it together even though he was scared, that she should be proud of him. She said she was, that she was also furious at his father, but that was a separate issue. She paused, then mentioned that the police had said Sticks offered to drive Oliver the rest of the way to Kansas City, asking if that offer was still open. Sticks confirmed the offer was still open, saying he was headed to Kansas City anyway and would be happy to bring Oliver home. Celeste said she had already spoken with the troopers, that they were going to do a background check, verify his identity, all of that, but that assuming it cleared, and they had said he had no criminal record, she would rather her son spend 3 hours with a kind stranger than get back in a car with his father right now. She asked if that was terrible of her, and Sticks said no, that he thought it was a mother protecting her child. She asked him to put Oliver back on, saying she needed to explain what was happening. Sticks handed the phone over, and Oliver listened while his mother explained that instead of waiting for his dad, he was going to ride with Sticks the rest of the way to Kansas City. The boy's face showed surprise, then something that looked remarkably like relief. He asked if he really could go with Sticks, looking at the biker with newfound wonder, then told his mom okay, that he trusted him, that Sticks had a really cool motorcycle. The background check cleared in 40 minutes. Sticks had been scrupulously legal for the past 2 decades, knowing that his motorcycle club affiliation meant any slip-up would be magnified tenfold. The troopers coordinated with the father, who was apparently relieved to not have to drive another 2 hours, which told Sticks everything he needed to know about the man's priorities. At 7:34 in the evening, Oliver climbed onto the back of Sticks's Softdale, wearing a borrowed helmet from the trooper's trunk, his small arms wrapped around Sticks's midsection, his backpack secured in the saddlebag. Sticks asked if he was ready, and Oliver said he had never been on a motorcycle before. Sticks told him this was going to be a good memory to replace the bad one, that he should hold on tight, that they had about 3 hours ahead of us. They rode through the Colorado evening and into Kansas as the sun set and the stars emerged. Sticks kept the speed reasonable, checking his mirrors constantly to make sure Oliver was secure. The boy's grip was tight at first, nervous but gradually relaxed as the miles passed. They stopped once for gas and bathroom breaks, and Sticks bought Oliver an ice cream sandwich from the station's freezer because the boy admitted he had never had one, and that seemed like a tragedy that needed correcting immediately. Oliver stood beside the motorcycle under the gas station lights, chocolate smeared on his chin, and said this was the best day ever, that the beginning was really bad, but this part was the best. Sticks told him that sometimes the worst days turn into the best stories, that someday Oliver would tell people about the time he got left at a rest stop and a biker drove him home, and it would be an adventure instead of a tragedy. Oliver asked if that was what happened to Sticks, if he had bad days that turned into good stories. Sticks thought about his own childhood, the absent father, the struggling mother, the years of feeling like he did not belong anywhere until he found the motorcycle club. He told Oliver, yes, that was exactly what happened to him. They pulled into Kansas City at 10:52 in the evening. Celeste Marsh was waiting outside her apartment building, pacing the sidewalk, checking her phone every 30 seconds. When she saw the motorcycle's headlight turn onto her street, she ran toward them. Oliver barely waited for the bike to stop before scrambling off and sprinting to his mother. Celeste caught him, lifted him despite his size, held him so tightly that Sticks could see the muscles straining in her arms. She was crying. Oliver was crying. Even Sticks felt his eyes burning as he watched the reunion. Celeste walked over to Sticks with Oliver's hand, firmly clasped in hers, thanking him. She was younger than he had expected, maybe mid-30s, with Oliver's brown hair and a face that showed both exhaustion and overwhelming relief. She said thank you did not feel like enough, that he had saved her son. Sticks said he had just given him a ride, that Oliver had saved himself by staying put and staying calm. Celeste reached out and hugged him, this stranger in leather, this biker who had appeared in her son's worst moment and turned it into an adventure. Sticks hugged her back, awkwardly but sincerely. Oliver asked if Sticks could come to breakfast tomorrow, saying please to his mom, that Sticks had a funeral, but maybe after. Celeste looked at Sticks and told him he was welcome any time, that she meant it, that he was family now as far as they were concerned. Sticks thought about the word family, about the blood family that had failed him, the motorcycle club family that had saved him, and now this unexpected connection forged on a highway in Colorado. He said he would like that. That breakfast sounded good. 3 months later, Sticks made the ride to Kansas City again, not for a funeral this time, but for Oliver's 9th birthday party. He brought a gift, a kid-sized leather jacket with a custom patch on the back that read, Honorary Road King. Oliver wore it for the rest of the day, showing everyone who would look, telling the story of how he got left at a rest stop and a biker saved him. Oliver corrected one of his friends, saying Sticks was not just a biker, that he was his friend Sticks, that he had driven 200 miles to bring him home. Celeste watched from the kitchen doorway, catching Sticks's eye and mouthing thank you for what must have been the 100th time. The custody arrangement changed after that summer. Oliver's father got supervised visitation only, pending a review that would probably never go his way. Oliver did not seem to mind. He had his mom, his friend Marcus with the trampoline, and a biker in Denver who called every Sunday to check in. During one of those calls, about a year after the rest stop, Oliver said he had figured something out. Styx asked what that was, and Oliver said that his dad forgetting him was the worst thing that ever happened to him, but it was also how he met Styx, so maybe it was not all bad. Styx smiled into the phone, reminding Oliver that sometimes the worst days turn into the best stories. Oliver said he remembered, then added that he wanted to thank Styx for seeing him, for noticing when he was sitting there all alone thinking nobody was ever going to notice he was gone. Styx told him he would always see him. That was what friends do. The bond between them became something neither had expected, but both needed. Styx had lost his own sister when she was 16, lost her to wounds that were not all physical, wounds inflicted by the same father who had abandoned Styx emotionally years before. He had spent decades carrying guilt for not protecting her, for being too young and powerless to stop what happened. Oliver gave him something he had not realized he was still searching for, a chance to be the protector he could not be all those years ago, a chance to show up for a kid who needed someone to believe him and act. For Oliver, Styx represented proof that the world held people who would not forget him, who would not dismiss him, who would drive 200 miles in the dark just to make sure he got home. In a childhood fractured by divorce and a father's indifference, Styx became the constant, the person who called every week, who remembered his birthday, who showed up when it mattered. The leather jacket with Honorary Road King on the back hung in Oliver's closet like a badge of honor, a reminder that he belonged somewhere, to someone, even when his own father had driven 60 miles without noticing he was gone. The Mountain Kings Motorcycle Club heard the story, and it became part of their culture, a reminder of why they rode, why brotherhood mattered, why paying attention to the world around them was not just good practice, but moral obligation. They started carrying cards in their wallets with the number for child services, with tips for recognizing signs of abandonment or distress, with reminders that sometimes the most important ride was not to a rally or a charity event, but to help a kid who needed someone to see him. Every August, on the anniversary of that rest stop day, Styx rode out to that same rest stop in eastern Colorado. He sat at the same picnic table, drank a Coke, and thought about a scared kid who held it together long enough for help to arrive. He thought about the choices we make in moments when we could easily look away, when intervening seems awkward or inconvenient, when it would be simpler to assume someone else will handle it. He thought about how close Oliver came to being just another kid sitting alone in a public place while hundreds of people drove past without seeing, without wondering, without caring enough to stop. And then Styx rode home, knowing that somewhere in Kansas City, a boy was wearing a leather jacket with Honorary Road King on the back, telling anyone who would listen about the day a biker drove 200 miles to bring him home, about the day someone finally saw him and decided he mattered enough to act. The story reminded everyone who heard it that children in crisis often look perfectly fine on the surface, that abandonment does not always announce itself with screaming or obvious distress, that sometimes a kid sitting too still at a picnic table is the loudest cry for help you will ever hear if you are paying attention. Oliver grew up knowing his voice mattered, knowing that asking for help was not weakness, but wisdom, knowing that the world held people like Styx who would stop their own journey to make sure a lost kid found his way home. He learned that family was not just the people you were born to, but the people who showed up when you needed them, who remembered you existed, who cared enough to act even when it was not convenient or easy. And Styx rode on, year after year, with his brothers beside him, carrying in his heart the knowledge that one afternoon at a rest stop he had been given a second chance, a chance to be the person he wished had been there for his sister all those years ago, a chance to prove that being forgotten by one person does not mean you are forgettable, that there are always people watching if you are brave enough to wait, patient enough to hope, and willing enough to trust that eventually someone will see you and refuse to look away. Some families are born, some are found at rest stops off Interstate 70, forged in the space between abandonment and rescue, between being forgotten and being seen, between a boy sitting alone and a biker deciding that today, this kid, this moment, mattered enough to stop and ask if everything was okay.